The most important tool in ESP Home Studio is the wizard, a powerful creator that lets you build new projects or edit existing ones. With it, in most cases, especially in simple projects, you won't need to write YAML yourself, the wizard handles the code generation. On the left side of the window you can see the live structure of your YAML file, and on the right you will find the matching configuration sections in the wizard that generates this code for you. And how to use it? In the first section we enter the project name. The wizard automatically fills this name everywhere it's needed inside the YAML file. Next we choose the microcontroller, either ESP8266 or ESP32. Then, using the drop-down menu, we select the exact board we are working with. Alternatively, instead of using the drop-down, we can simply type the board name manually. For ESP32 based boards, we can also choose the platform, Arduino or ESP-IDF. There are additional options here as well, such as add Mac or use PSRAM, and for ESP8266 boards, instead of framework or PSRAM settings, we can enable a higher CPU frequency. The next section handles the connection between device and Home Assistant. By default, all ESP boards use Wi-Fi, as you can see on the left. It's also possible to use wired Ethernet, but only with ESP32. When we enable it, a new tab appears, and here we can choose the specific Ethernet chip used by the network interface connected to device. Now I will switch back to ESP8266 configuration and enter my Wi-Fi SSID and the password. We can also enable Fast Connect and set a password for the AP mode. AP mode can be disabled entirely, although it's usually not recommended at the beginning, and you will see a warning if you try to turn it off. The next small section is OTA, used for updating the firmware over the air, either wirelessly or through Ethernet. Here we can set our own OTA password, or disable OTA completely, although I really don't recommend turning it off. There are also some additional parameters, but we will cover those in a separate video. In the next section we can choose which protocol the device will use to communicate with Home Assistant. By default, this is the Home Assistant API, but we can also switch to MQTT, which requires configuration a few additional parameters. It's also possible to enable MQTT alongside the API. Both protocols can work at the same time. I will cover the full MQTT configuration in a separate video. For now, I recommended keeping the API enabled to ensure that device always maintains a reliable, direct connection to Home Assistant. The reboot timeout for API is set to 15 minutes by default, so it doesn't need to appear in the YAML. We can also generate a security key here, just like in the original Home Assistant dashboard. These keys will be required for all ESP Home projects by the end of 2026, but not yet, so you can uncheck this option. The next section, Enable System Logging, consists of several panels inside the wizard, Common and Enable Web Server. In the Common tab, we can enable additional features simply by checking the boxes. The YAML expands automatically and we don't have to write anything manually. We can enable the built-in web server, and we can also turn on web server authentication. The log mode can be changed to one of the several levels, for example info, or we can disable logging entirely by setting the baud rate to 0. When we do that, the RX and TX pins used by the logger become free again, which means we can repurpose them as regular GPIO pins. By default, ESP Home Studio sets the log mode to debug, and in the next video I will show how and when to use the remaining logging options. The next section, Select Bus, is used to choose the communication buses required by many different sensors. We have access to I2C, SPI, UART, CAN bus, OneWire and Modbus. The YAML code is updated only when we enable a specific bus. We use these buses only when needed, that is, when we are working with sensors that rely on them. In the next video I will show how to build a thermometer using the Dallas DS18B20 sensor, so we'll be using the one-wire bus. And if we decide to add a display, for example an OLED over I2C, it takes literally one click to enable the bus. We just need to make sure that pins don't overlap, which is why it's best to label them as GPIO, so we always know exactly what's used where. And if you are not sure how the pins labeled D1, D2, D3, etc. on your ESP board map to the actual GPIO numbers, we've added a very handy feature in ESP Home Studio, Show Pinout, available right here at the top. Right now we have the D1 mini board selected and we can see its verified pinout. If the board name is highlighted in green, it means the pinout is 100% confirmed. You can sort the pin list by GPIO number or by the pin name. We can also preview pinouts for other boards, for example Node MCU, and let's check Node MCU version 2. Oh, and for example here the board name is shown in orange, which indicates that the pinout is not fully confirmed and should be verified manually by the user. The next section, Use Components, allows us to easily add a wide variety of useful components, such as temperature sensors, pressure sensors, humidity sensors, text sensors, switches, buttons, lights, etc. There's a lot to choose from, and even camera support is available, although only for certain ESP32 boards. It's important to note that components are added as separate files. In the YAML preview you can see an Include entry. After clicking Save, the project automatically expands with a new sensor folder containing a sensor.yaml file. Inside, ESP Home Studio generates a ready-to-use template for one of the example sensors. That's where we later add our own sensor, use snippets and build more complex logic, but that's something I will cover in another video. In the bottom right corner of the Use Components section there's a Help button, and it's absolutely worth opening. First, this table helps you understand ESP Home much faster. Second, it clearly shows the flow between Home Assistant and your device for different kinds of sensors, logic modules and components. You can instantly see what each component does, whether it has a physical pin, what its typical use case is, and in which direction the communication works. These simple explanations are often missing in the Home Assistant documentation or buried inside code examples that can be confusing for beginners. This could be especially helpful, for example, when working with ESP Home switches and Home Assistant switches at the same time, since they behave very differently and it's easy to lose track without a clear visual explanation, like in this table. The final section of the wizard exists only inside the YAML code on the left side. It's simply a place where we can manually add custom YAML if we ever need to. It's important to note that if we add any text outside the user code section, then after making any changes in the wizard, the entire file will be refreshed and anything outside user code will be removed. Even if, for example, we delete all other sections from the YAML, any small modification in the wizard will regenerate the whole configuration, of course based on the options we've selected. And that's everything when it comes to the key features and behavior of the ESP Home Studio wizard. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.